Hey, so I recently posted these photos of Doreen and Josh for their pre-engagement, and I got a couple of compliments. Thank you guys. And then I also got asked how I color graded these images. I used one of my presets to get the color grading that you saw on those final images. So today I'm just going to teach you how I developed that preset, and I am also going to just drop a link to the preset in my bio. You can download it and use it, tweak it to your own liking, and yeah, I hope it helps improve your photos. So let's dive right into it. Let's just click on the VSCO 2 and show you the basic adjustments. So you basically have your exposure toned down to 30. You basically have your contrast up by 7, highlights down by 35, and shadows up by 12, whites down by 11, and blacks also down by 5. When it comes to the presence, you have the vibrance up just by 5. Most of the magic happens in the tone curve and uh, the color gradient panel. So in the tone curve, basically, what I do is I bring my shadows, which is this one, up a bit more just to bring in some contrast in the photos. And then I lift up closer to my shadow, closer to my mid-tone, but more to my shadowy part up a bit, just so I bring back the brightness of the image. That's what I do for most of my tone curve, and then I head to the RGB panel, the red channel, and then I bring down my shadowy part, just also down a bit, just to have some teal in the shadow, and then just in the middle part of the shadow, I make a point and then I just drag it just one up, just like one, just tiny bit, just to bring back some warmth in the skin tone. But yeah, that is that. And then when you come to the color mixer, my HSL, this is what I have here. The hues, I always pull my yellows slightly to the greens and then my greens slightly to aqua. And as you can see, my blues are always -3 down to the teal side or to the aqua side. And then for saturation, I have my oranges pop up a bit by 5. My yellows are always down. I always bring my yellow down because I noticed for almost every image there's like yellow in there. There's like a lot of yellows in there because I shoot also at a higher Kelvin. I, I shoot almost like 5,000 and above. So there's always warmth in there. There's always yellows in there. So I just bring the yellows down and I increase my greens a bit to 22. And then here you have my aqua plus 20 and then my blues plus 5. For luminance, you can see I mostly bring everything down. So basically my yellows, my green, and my aqua, I have them all the time down. So this just so that this these colors that are always like poppy, they are always down so that the subjects would pop. Now to the color grading panel. Here you can see I have my midtones being in between the yellows and the orange, or even slightly biased towards the orange area. And then I have my shadows in the aqua and teal area, just by a tiny margin. It's not too much. And then you can see my highlights are also a bit towards my yellows and orange panel. So this is basically it. This is basically it for my color grading. I don't do too much. The next thing I do is probably go to the masking and I just adjust the masking a bit. So I will start with a linear gradient where I do this and then I bring the exposure down a bit just so when you first see the image your eyes don't go everywhere but they go towards the upper side of the image, and we're going to do a couple of masking, which would try to bring your attention to the subject and not the whole environment that you see. So yeah, just by 30 and it's looking pretty good already. I'm just going to subtract my subject from it just so I don't want it to be on the subject themselves. So I just brought down exposure, but then I subtracted the subject from it. I'm going to create a second mask where I choose the subject, and I mostly do this all the time. So when I do this, I just invert it and then I bring down the exposure a bit. Now you can tell easily that when you first look at the image, you can easily like focus on the subject just because I brought down the exposure of the background because I selected the subject and inverted, which means that I chose to work on the background of the image and not the subjects themselves. So I basically just brought down the exposure of the background of the image just so our eyes can focus on the subjects a bit more. The other thing I noticed is that Joshua's face is shadowy from one side, which is fine. But in this case, I would just like to bump it up a bit. I would just like to bump it up a bit. So I just go back to another mask and use my brush tool. So use my brush tool and then I just expose for the shadows a little bit. And there we go. So this is looking pretty good for me already. So yeah, here we go, my people. This looks pretty much good to me. The other things I did, I just went back to Photoshop to do a couple of things, but that does not involve any color grading. So there you go from this, and then now we have this.